Hello there, and welcome to the 92nd episode of the Retrotopia podcast. My name's Alan, your retro collecting British chum, and I'm here to talk to you not about a single retro game, oh no, about many retro games, as I talk about my list of essentially the unicorns that I would like to add to my collection. If you're new to the show, then let me introduce myself. My name is Alan and I am an addict. That's right, I am addicted to collecting games. I have a modest, though expanding collection of games, and I'm always looking to add some new things to the collection. As such, I have a wish list of probably about 300 to 400 games at any given time, and some of them are almost unattainable, I would say. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Just some of those games in the collection that are wishlist games, them someday games that I hope to get hold of one day, but we shall see. And in case you're wondering, the music you're listening to right now is from Sonic Adventure 2, which is not one of the games on the list. I already own that, but it's me. Wanted to kick the episode off with a little bit of Sonic music, and it doesn't get much better than this. So before we get into the episode proper, I just want to get our plugs out of the way. If you're listening to this, thank you. If this is your first episode, thank you again for taking a chance on us. If you like what you hear, you can find all of our social medias, our Discord, our Patreon, and all of that good stuff, our merch stall, stand, shop, whatever. You can find that at linktree/retrotopia. That's linktr.ee/retrotopia. Come along, follow, like, share, get the word of mouth going. Come and get some fancy Retrotopia swag to wear. I think that's what people don't call it these days. No, it's drip these days, isn't it? Retrotopia drip or fit. I don't fucking know. I'm old. You can also support us by joining our Patreon. It's free to join at the basic tier, and you get access to all of our extra content. You can listen to our mini review show, Quick Play, where a host will pick a game and just basically review it in 20 minutes or so. A nice little bump to get you through your fortnight. You can listen to our Retro Bites series, which is a monthly discussion show in which Sam, Brian, and I get together to just talk about video games and life. And if you're a Patreon, you get that 15 days earlier than everyone else and get an extra topic tacked onto the end just for you lovely people. You can also comment on episodes. You can comment on the game in question or the games in question, as is the case may be this week. You can vote in polls. You can write into our 9-bit banter box, which in the traditional style of the 5x5s of old, we don't actually have this week, but I can assure you that when we do have it, it is very culturally elegant. At we have a $2 tier as well on Patreon, which entitles you to all of the above. But you can also pick a game for our quick play series and choose a host of your choice, which I've started saying properly now. You can throw a game at the host of your choice, and they'll review it for you. And you also get access to our brand new show, New Game Plus, which is kind of a whenever we feel like review, usually one man show. Although we're open to spreading the love a little bit around the Retrotopia hosts. But basically, what we do is we review modern games. So if there's anything that we've been playing recently that doesn't really fit in with the vibe of the main Retrotopia show, we'll do it there. So that's been a lot of fun. So obviously, there's no gentleman's interlude. This gentleman's interlude, easy enough for me to say because I only fucking do the thing. There's no gentleman's interlude this week because you're going to hear enough of me talking over the next hour or so. So I thought I'd spare you that indignation. But what I will say is a little bit of backstory. Why not? I have been playing video games pretty much my entire life, and it's one of those things that as a lad, we had a good few of the systems that were available. Never kept the old one though, which has always kind of galled me as an adult. Probably about I don't know, say 10 to 15 years ago, I started collecting in earnest. So I had an Xbox 360 at the time, and I would think that was pretty much my only console. And when I met my now wife, she came onto the scene and brought along I think it was the GameCube that she brought with her, and fully encouraged and endorsed my crippling gaming addiction. And from then on, I just started scooping up consoles, scooping up games, working on the endless problem of finding space for everything, which I've got a pretty good handle on now. We've got an entire room dedicated to gaming, and I'm coming up to somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,000 physical games for, I don't know, let's say 30 odd systems, and I love it. I love it. I don't spend money on fancy clothes. I don't spend money on you know colognes or jewelry or just about anything else. I like to spend my money on gaming, and I love it when payday rolls around and I can add a few more gems to the collection there. And yeah, that's basically what this episode is all about. So we've got we you guys, the you Patreons, you really came through this week because I asked for some questions, some comments. I wanted you guys to give me some of your gaming white whales as well, and you came through. So I decided to bake these questions into the main episode wherever I thought they'd fit best. And this is kind of a loose list. It's nothing really set in stone. I mean, the order is kind of in a ranking, I guess, but there's a fair amount of shuffle, because truth be told, getting this down to about 10 games with a few honorable mentions as well was a very, very difficult task. Basically, I want everything. I want all of the games, please. So, if you guys could just go ahead and join the Patreon there, throw a couple of bucks at us, so I can become ridiculously wealthy and buy all of these games. That would be great. I would appreciate it. All right, then, without further ado, I'm going to fire up a little bit of music, and then when I come back, I'm going to talk about all of my gaming white whales. Thanks for listening, guys. Enjoy the show. Man, there is just so much good video game music, right? I mean, that, of course, was Wily's Castle from Mega Man 2, which is a series that does not appear in this ranking, although it is a bit of a gap in my collection that I've been meaning to fill. I've got I guess, the collected edition, I think. But having those NES carts, that would be something I need to look into. All right, plenty of games to get to, so let's stop wasting time. Now, I do have 10 games ranked for this. I do have 5 honorable mentions, and I have a bunch of your comments slapped in as well. So let's get on with this. And we're going to kick off with a couple of comments from you guys. So Unbuckled Cape says, "Oh, mighty collector. Aside from collecting comics, I have started collecting superhero based video games here and there. If you didn't collect games, what would you collect, or what else do you collect aside from our hearts?" Yes, I do. I do collect hearts, but that's for a completely different reason altogether, and I'm not really allowed to get into it here. I don't want to incriminate myself. Um, you know what, Unbuckled Cape? It would almost certainly be comics. I do sort of collect the odd comic here and there, but nowhere near as much as I used to. I used to collect all of the Star Wars comics from the expanded universe. Back before the Disney merger and all the Dark Horse comics there. I have subsequently gotten rid of all of them because I needed the space. But yeah, comics would, I think, almost exclusively be the thing that I would collect the most if I wasn't collecting video games, because comics are awesome. Aside from what else do I collect? Nothing really. Games are my primary focus and my one true love. Sharkbite says, I would like to know what your cheapest and most expensive item slash game is. Also, your worst and best item slash game, please. Um, I mean, cheapest. There's probably a bunch of games in the collection that are pretty cheap these days. I mean, some of the sports games. I think I've got a copy of FIFA '07 for the PlayStation 2 up there somewhere that was gifted to me, and that's probably only worth like a couple of pennies, really. Such is the way of sports games. They never really hold their value. Most expensive, probably either my copy of Castlevania Symphony of the Night for PlayStation 1, or, and this is more likely, my copy of Fantasy Star 4 in box on the Mega Drive. I don't know what it goes for these days, but that's probably up there for value. And what is your worst and best item or game? Oh, geez. I mean, best is again probably Symphony of the Night. It's one of my favorite games of all time. So, yeah, that's possible. And worst, I don't know. I've got so many shit games in the collection. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would. Because you know me, I'm Alan. I'm the guy who just loves everything gaming wise. Even the shit games I really enjoy. So I don't know. Not the best. I guess I mean, I suppose if you wanted to be subjective, it's probably something like Sonic '06, but I'm here to tell you, I don't care what anyone says, I fucking love that game, and I'll probably do an episode of it one day, so watch this space. All right, so let's get into some honorable mentions here. So these games didn't quite make the list, and they're in no particular order, of course. But you know, these are just games that I would like to get hold of one day. So there is Jurassic Park on the Mega CD, which is a point and click adventure game for the Mega CD. And that, I mean, it's not actually all that expensive to get on its own, but the caveat there being I would need to get a Mega CD, which I don't yet own. I hope to add that to the collection one day, but if you take the two together, that's probably getting up there in price. So that's something I'm going to have to think about. But I played this game a bunch back when I was in school, and even then, I remember the graphics being really quite pixelated and hard to make out. But I had so much fun with that fucking game. I love a good point and click, and I love Jurassic Park. So there you go. Next up, I had Castlevania Curse of Darkness for the PlayStation 2. I don't know much about this game. I know it's a 3D Castlevania. Um, it's here by virtue of being in Castlevania. It's north of £100 usually, but it's a Castlevania game, and I would like an entire collection of Castlevania. So that's an obvious pick. Something that's a little less obvious, and I'm just going to take a sip of drink, and I've only just gotten started. That's not going to bode well. So something slightly less obvious for me, especially, is Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on the Dreamcast. Not necessarily prohibitively expensive, but it does get up there, especially in box with manual and all the rest of it. It's a fighting game. I'm not the biggest fan of fighting games, but you know, I love Marvel. I love Marvel. I enjoy Capcom's fighting offering, Street Fighter and what have you. And this game just looks stunning. I would love, and I know it's come out on the Marvel versus Capcom collection. I think it is that's come out recently. But you know, I'm an original systems kind of guy. I like to have, and that goes for a lot of these games actually. A lot of games have come out on collections and things like that. I even own some of these games, I think, on a collection. But I'm talking about the original copies. I want to play these things on original hardware. Call me a snob if you will. Right, before I get to the next honourable mention, I'm going to read a comment here from Fallen Snow Kiku because it kind of loosely ties in, and that's the theme with a lot of these comments. You know, a lot of them loosely tie into what I'm talking about. One of them ties in directly. One of you guys actually guessed one of these games on my list, and I'll tell you who when we get there. But Fallen Snow Kiku says, I'm not the most dedicated collector, but I have managed to amass every mainline Final Fantasy game in one format or another, with one exception 11. While I have no desire to actually play it or anything, it's not in there. I suppose I can find a PS2 disc relatively cheap since the servers there have been shut down and it's unplayable. So I can have for completionist's sake. If you're curious, I own 1 to 6 on Switch, 7 through 9 as well, as 13, 14, and 15 on Steam, and 10, 12, and 16 on PlayStation. Yeah, Kiku, I am also trying to amass every mainline Final Fantasy game, and it annoys me no end that 11 and oh, is it 14? I can't. I think it's 14. Is 14 the other MMO RPG? I think so. Correct me if I'm wrong. But not having those two in the collection does piss me off. And I'm not. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I have also considered just getting a copy of Final Fantasy 11, even though I fully know it doesn't work, just to add to the collection for completionist's sake. So I'm in the same boat with you, Kiku. I respect that take. Um, Now, the reason I read this here is because it's an RPG, and that brings us to Skies of Arcadia for the Dreamcast. Which, again, Dreamcast getting a lot of love here because I don't have the biggest collection of Dreamcast games, and Skies of Arcadia is an RPG on the Dreamcast that just looks stunning. I think it might have come up in Brian's episode talking about the RPGs that he most wants to play, and I agree. Like the look of this game is something that I would very much be interested in. An RPG about sky pirates? Whoa, come on now. That sounds like a good time. So I would love to add that to my collection. Next up, I've got another comment here, actually. I'm going to plug this one in. And we've got Super Dave, who says, This is video game adjacent, but I would like a complete set of Pokemon strategy guides for generations 1 through 4, maybe 5. I have a few scattered volumes which triggers the collector's need for a complete set. And that line right there absolutely speaks to me in volumes. It's triggers the collector's need for a complete set. Yes, I am the same. I hate having just disparate, entries in a series. Like I love to have the whole set, which ties in nicely to my next honorable mention, which is the Pokemon Black or White, and Pokemon Black and White 2 as well for the Nintendo DS. I love Pokemon. I was big into the Pokemon hype back in the day. I remember getting my very first copy of Pokemon Blue back in the day, and I only ever really played up to Gen 3, so Ruby and Sapphire, I think. And then I kind of fell off. So I never played Pearl and Diamond, although I own them now, so I will get round to that eventually. And then I just kind of fell out until I think, oh, what was it? X and Y, I think was the next in the series that I played, and I can't remember what generation that is. But I never played the Black and White series, one or two, and all in, like especially Pokemon Black and White 2, they're at least £100 a pop at the moment. I don't know why. But yeah, I would like the collector's need for a complete set has me wanting every entry in the Pokemon series. And who could blame me? Right, so that's it for my honorable mentions, which leads us into my top 10 most wishlisted games. And I'm going to put some music in before each one of these just to spice it up a little bit. So let's get into it. Yeah, some of the music for these games is probably going to be a bit obscure because some of these picks are actually quite obscure. But number 10 on my list is actually for my beloved Sega Master System, the very first console I ever owned. And it is Golden Axe Warrior. Golden Axe Warrior is a game that is absolutely and quintessentially a Zelda clone, which is enough for me. I love the Golden Axe series. They are just pure arcade nonsense, lots of fun. I don't actually know if I've ever beaten one. I'll have to remedy that someday. But when you told me that there is a game that is a cross between my beloved Golden Axe and my beloved Zelda, and it actually apparently does the job reasonably well, now you've got my attention. It's not one of the most expensive games that's on this list, but it gets up there around about £100, and if you have a look at this game, I mean, the music sounds great. The gameplay looks, again, as close to the Legend of Zelda as you can get. And you play as Axe Battler, I think, which is probably the stupidest name for a protagonist in any game ever. But I love it. So yeah, this looks like it's going to scratch two of my itches at the same time, and I've got a lot of love for that. So number 10 on my list, Golden Axe Warrior for the Sega Master System. And that's all I can really say about that because, again, I've never played it. I don't know much about it beyond that, but damned if I don't want to give it a try. So, one day, one day. And that's the theme of this episode, one day. So before we get into number 9, I'm going to read a comment from Super. No, I assume it's Super Jez or Super JES. I'm going to say Super Jez because I like the way it sounds. So Super Jez says, "So I'm mostly an SNES collector, but will throw some cash at NES and Game Boy from time to time. That being said, again, Hag- I think that's Hagain. I'm not sure. I've not heard of that one. Hagain will always be a knight in shining armor to me. It's a really fun game and obviously extremely rare. I also used to own Little Samson complete in box. Sold it for $300 back in the mid 2000s. That one still hurts. Yeah, Jez, it's never nice when I'm sure you needed the money at the time, and you've got to do what you've got to do. But I mean, I too sometimes look back on all of the games and the consoles and what have you that we used to have and just think, what if I just kept hold of those, and God, what would some of that be worth now? I tell you what, it'd be worth nothing because I wouldn't sell it. But the reason that I threw your comment in here is because you mentioned the Game Boy, and that was as close a segue as I could get to my number 9. That is probably the most inappropriate music for this game that I could think of, because my number 9 is Resident Evil Gaiden, however you say that fucking word, for the Game Boy Color. Now this again, it's a Game Boy Color game. It's a Game Boy Color game that probably a lot of people don't know exists. A Resident Evil game on the Game Boy Color. Um, not prohibitively expensive. Probably around about that £90 mark. Ah, I am a huge, huge Resident Evil fan. As you are going to hear on next week's episode, where we talk about Resident Evil. There you go, some spoilers for you. And it is my fervent desire to hold the complete set of Resident Evil games. And I have only one game missing in the collection, and this is it. To have a look at the screenshots and have a look at the gameplay, oh boy. I mean, I'm not going to say it looks like the worst game ever, but there is that fear holding me back. There's that fear of spending all of this money on a game that's perhaps not going to be as good as I want it to be. Um I mean, it definitely looks like a Resident Evil game, and it is a gaping hole in my collection that is otherwise absolutely chock a block. But yeah, Resident Evil Gaiden. Does Resident Evil work on a Game Boy Color? Watch this space because I'll almost certainly buy it one day. And you know what? I think that will make for some fantastic quick play fodder. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see if I can make that happen one day. All right then. So moving on to my next, what's this? Number 8, I think. I've lost count already. Now, before I get into my number 8, I am going to read a comment from one Randy Berridge who says, Very much looking forward to this episode. I'm a physical media obsessive with an addictive personality which has been destructive combo for my wallet. I am currently very focused on collecting for the Sega Genesis slash Master System and the PS2. Those are my two favourite consoles of all time, so rounding out my collection with those systems is giving me some sense of focus. And then he lists a couple of games here. So PS2, GTA Vice City Stories was originally released on the PSP, which I didn't have. One of the few Rockstar releases I have not played, and who would say no to more time with that soundtrack? Agreed. Um, just to cut in here, Randy, I played GTA Liberty City Stories on the PSP not all that long ago, and it basically just played like a portable Grand Theft Auto 3, just with some of the kinks ironed out. So, if Vice City is basically, I mean, the PSP was kind of just a portable PS2, wasn't it? So I can't imagine that being a bad time, and I would like to add that to my collection as well. He then goes on to say, Sega. Dune, The Battle for Arrakis. As a massive Dune head and a fan of Sega, this is a must own for me. It's only a matter of time. Real time strategy games can be a slippery slope, can be a slippery slope for me, but I'm willing to take the risk. Eager to hear your unicorns, Alan. Cheers. Well, Randy, you are the one. If ever we needed any more proof that you are a brother from another continent, because I very much agree with the physical media obsessive. Me too. Addictive personality. Oh boy, me too. And I would also like to round out collections for Sega Genesis or Megasys, as we call it around these parts, which apparently is not a trademark to Retrotopia. Who knew? And the Master System. But you, out of everyone here and out of all of the games that are around, guessed my number 8 correctly. Yes, as it turns out, my number 8 is in fact Dune 2 The Battle for Arrakis for the Sega Mega Drive. And I'm going to call it the Mega Drive now because I don't want it for the Genesis, I want it for the Mega Drive. Well done, Randy. Well guessed out of all of the games I could have chosen. But yes, I'm not the biggest real-time strategy guy, not these days, but back in the day, I used to play quite a few of them. I loved my Command and Conquer, my Red Alert, and what have you. And I was it Alpha Centauri? I think was that a Sid Meier's game? I think so. I really enjoyed that one as well. I just loved whiling away the hours, just building up resources and building armies, and then invariably taking too long and getting absolutely fucked over when a horde of the opposing teams just came over the hill and slaughtered everyone. Good times. So yes, my old love of real time strategy games comes together with my very real love of the Duniverse, the universe of Dune, and I am a huge fan. I'm looking at my shelf over there, and I have lots and lots of Dune books, let me tell you. Obviously a big fan of the original Frank Herbert ones. A fan to a lesser extent, but still a fan of his son Brian. Yeah, Brian Herbert's sort of expanded Dune universe. I mean, yeah, all right, hate me if you will, but yeah, I they're not as good, obviously, but any excuse to spend more time in that universe is a welcome one, which is why I want this game so much. Funnily enough, a subject of discussion between me and my brother recently. He's been playing it on, I guess he's got one of those little handheld retro game devices that have thousands of games on it, and he found it on there, and yeah, he thinks it's good. This game has been staring at me from the window of my local game shop, not 10 minutes away from where I am sitting right now. It has been staring at me from the window of that shop for well over a year now. It's £85. So again, it's not sky high, but it is a bit of an ask for a Mega Drive game. And I think it's just waiting for me. I think it's just waiting for me to pull the trigger, come down there and give it a new home. And I mean, the idea of building up resources on good old Arrakis there, and fighting sandstorms and sandworms and the bastard Harkonnens. I hate those fucking guys. Yeah, sign me the fuck up. That sounds like a good time all over. So, Dune 2 Battle of Arrakis for the Mega Drive, and in at my number 8. Which brings me to my number 7, and it's about damn time the Sega Saturn got some love. So, my number 7. For the record, this one has the absolute favourite track name out of all of these for me, because that was Jazzy Sabotage. Telling y'all it's a Jazzy Sabotage. So, in at number 7 is Guardian Heroes for the Sega Saturn. Now, my brother and I, we played this game so much back in the day. I'm not even sure how we came to own it, or whether we borrowed it, or I don't think we rented it. I have the memory of a goldfish, a particularly ignorant goldfish, let's say. My brother would probably know, but there's no chance he's listening to this. So we used to take our Sega Saturn with us every weekend when we'd spend the weekend round our nan's house, and this was one of the games that I remember playing quite a lot. If any of you have ever played it, you already know, but this game has an absolutely gorgeous cartoony art style, and it's a beat 'em up essentially. Um, with all the fun that entails. I mean, I'm a big fan of the beat 'em up genre. Again, I say it a lot, and I've said this about a few genres now, but again, the purest form of gaming, up there with whatever else I've said so far. Basically everything. I throw these accolades round like nobody's business. But yeah, it's kind of a medieval looking beat 'em up. I don't really know how much more to describe about this one. It's just pure fun. It's been years since I've played it. I don't remember much about the levels. I remember the characters. If you look them up, they all look fucking crazy. It's great. But it was just tons of fun. We just sunk so many hours into this one. Um, and I would like to have it back. I would like to have that little slice of my childhood back, and see if it holds up as well as I remember. I mean, I definitely remember that it had branching paths, which was, gave it a lot of replayability. You could get to different levels, different bosses, and things like that. And it's developed by Treasure. And if you can find me a bad Treasure game, please let me know, because I'll review it and see if it's actually bad. But Treasure, Gunstar Heroes, Alien Soldier, I think, and a slew of other games. They back in the day they were firing on all cylinders, and just well known for that fast-paced, hectic gameplay style. And this is a great example of that. And I've just recently got a Sega Saturn, as you know, if you've been listening to the show for any amount of time. And it's the collection is in its infancy, but this is definitely one that's going to have to go into that Sega Saturn collection. So bring it on. Okay, then, before we get into number 6, we've got another comment here from a Mr. Hooley, who says, probably Fallout Brotherhood of Steel for the Xbox/ PS2, just because it's the only one I don't own in the series, but I'm not paying $80 to give it a try. Yeah, Mr. Hooley, I can appreciate that take there, because I mean that's with a lot of these games, especially with the state of the retro game resale market, there are a lot of games that are perhaps valued a lot higher than their actual worth. I mean, quite famously, I remember back on the Kirby 64 episode, um, I actually played that on Nintendo Switch Online. It was on my gaming wish list for a time, and that was a game that was north of, oh, I don't know, 120, £140. And as it turns out, when I played it on the NSO, it was a fine game, but so short. And I definitely would have felt burnt if I'd sunk all of that money to find out that that's all I was getting back. So I get that. I get that, Mr. Hooley. Um, but your take about It's the only one in the series that you don't own. Leads me into my number 6. Yeah, I may have let that run on a little bit longer than I had to, but I don't think there is a bad piece of music in this entire series. It is, of course, Streets of Rage 3 for the Mega Drive. Now, I am a big fan of Streets of Rage 1. Famously, a big fan of Streets of Rage 2, which if memory serves, is the one we reviewed on the show, and I had plenty of good things to say about it. I've played and owned Streets of Rage 4, which I got on the Nintendo Switch a couple of years back, and me and the missus played through that one New Year's Eve and fucking loved it. Streets of Rage 3 is the only one in the series that I don't own. It is up there in price, between 100 and 150 pounds, and I've heard I've heard perhaps unsubstantiated rumors that it's not as good as some of the others. And I have to wonder how. I have to wonder what it is that I think out of the entire series, this is the one that sort of divides the fan base more than any others. So I would like to know why. I mean, it looks great. The music sounds fantastic. I mean, granted, the characters are a bit weird. I mean, what is it? You play as a fucking kangaroo or something? Am I getting that right? Is there a kangaroo in Streets of Rage 3? I'm going to look that up right now as we talk. Because if that's the case, I think that's actually a mark in its favor. Streets of Rage 3 Kangaroo. Yes, Roo. A kangaroo with boxing shorts and boxing gloves on. I mean, look at that. I mean, come on. That can't be a bad thing, surely. Um, I will add this to my collection one day. Absolutely. I mean, I have number 1, I have number 2, and I have number 4. Now, for those of you here who are like myself, like Mr. Hooley, don't like having gaps in our gaming collection. I mean, how can I possibly resist just plugging that hole? So for better or worse, I think I'm gonna have to pull the trigger on this one sooner rather than later and just find out what it's all about. I mean, is it the combat? Is that? I mean, because they can't have screwed the combat up, surely. I mean, it's Streets of Rage. There are 3 other games where they get it perfect, so it can't be that. I don't know. I would just love to find out. So, Streets of Rage 3 in at my number, whatever the hell it was, number 6 on my wish list. Okay, so before we get into number 5, we have another comment. Blue Yoshi 94 says Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland and Pokemon Emerald, both for the Game Boy Advance. Speaking of Game Boy Advance Kirby games, I would like to recommend, if you haven't played it yet, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. It is on Switch Online and it is a Metroidvania Kirby game. Good shout, Blue Yoshi. I have actually played Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. That's the one. I've played that one. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. Uh, I have it on the Game Boy Advance, which to this day is still probably my favorite handheld console of all time. And yes, that game fucks. It is absolutely brilliant. Looks spectacular on the console, and a Metroidvania on a handheld console. I don't even care if it's a Kirby one. I like Kirby. I shouldn't say that. Kirby is a good time, but a Kirby Metroidvania, sign me up. And I did. I signed up and I played it. Um, Pokemon Emerald as well is one that I could have put on this list, but I did not. But so good shout, very good shout. But I mean, you mentioned a Nintendo franchise, which again, in the spirit of flimsy segues, leads me into my number 5. I feel like if any single track in this entire list is going to be the most recognizable, it's probably going to be that one. That is from Paper Mario on the Nintendo 64, the very first Paper Mario game. And I know what you're going to say. It's on Nintendo Switch Online, I think. I haven't checked, but I'm almost certain it's on there. And I could just go and play it there. But that's not what we're here talking about today. I want the physical copies. And I've never played Paper Mario on the Nintendo 64. Matter of fact, my only experience with Paper Mario was the Origami King, which came out on the Nintendo Switch just a couple of years ago, and I really enjoyed that game. I thought the art style was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, there's no way that you can make a Paper Mario game look like shit. Even even on the Nintendo 64, which now listen, I love the N64, don't get me wrong, but some of those games haven't aged particularly well. But that paper book f- papers. Oh, what am I trying to say here? That storybook. That's the one. That storybook look of Paper Mario 64. I just think it looks great. I think it looks awesome. Again, it's way up there in price. In fact, you know what? Let me just look at what it's currently going for on my beloved app here, and because I think it's yeah, see, Thousand Year Door, I did pick up for the GameCube, not all that long ago, in fact. And I can't start them yet. I cannot play. I listen. If you're like me, you like to do things in order. £170 for Paper Mario 64. This has been all over the place, but I've been doing this for 40 minutes now, and by God, it is difficult to do a podcast all by yourself. But yeah, £170, and I'm sure it's going to be a good time. Again, it's the Kirby 64 thing. I don't know how long it is, but it's a Mario game, and it's very well spoken of. So I can't imagine that this is going to be much of a risk, right? Right? I mean, let me know if you've played this game right into the show. Let me know if it's any good. Again, one day when I have a spare 170 odd pounds lying around, I will get this for the N64. So, so there. All right then, and in keeping with the theme of the Nintendo 64, and as this show gradually breaks down even further than it already has, I'm going to move on to my number four. Again, I think there's an outside chance that this is another one that you guys might recognize from the music alone. It is Conker's Bad Fur Day for the Nintendo 64. What do I need to say about this game? It is very expensive these days, and I've heard mixed reviews as to how good it is, but I know full well that the humor on this game is absolutely on point, and that is its main selling point for me. I remember way back in the day, back when I was in secondary school, I went to a friend's house, and they basically popped this fucking game into the Nintendo 64 and played me the famous, the world famous Great and Mighty Pooh song. And come on. If that doesn't sell itself to a teenage boy who's still, I mean, I say that I'm a 40-year-old man and I am still very amused by poop and fart jokes and things like that. I mean, I think deep down we all are, aren't we? Down to our very core. Um, but yeah, I watched that scene and I was like, what in the fuck is this? Because that style of gross out humor, it's a yeah, and very adult humor for the most part, was not something that we'd necessarily seen much of in video games. And it's I never forgot that. I don't think anyone who's ever seen it has forgotten it, have they? So I've just never given it the time, and I know it's on the rare replay. But again, not going to repeat myself. That's not the point. It's just it's one of those games that I saw once for approximately 10 to 15 minutes and still to this day would just love to get my hands on and play through just to see if it's as funny in its entirety as that one small clip I saw some, I don't know, more than 20 fucking years ago. That's how much of an impression that it left on me. So yeah, Conker's Bad Fur Day, you better be as funny as I fucking think you are for the price that you're asking. But you have earned a spot at number 4 for nostalgia and longevity alone. So before we get to my number 3, I've got another comment to chuck in here, and this one comes from the Big Deal. And he says, "Warning, long post, so feel free to not read it on the air, but wanted to share the story." Oh, I'm going to read it, buddy. "For the longest time, my white whale was WWF Rage in the Cage for Sega CD. I was a big fan of the WWF LJN games of the 90s like Royal Rumble and Raw, and wanted to play this ever since I saw it in an electronics boutique back in the day, knowing I'd never own a Sega CD. Well, around 2005, I bought a Genesis and a Sega CD at a flea market with a few games, including this. Needless to say, I was beyond disappointed when I got it home. It had a larger roster than its Genesis counterparts at 20 wrestlers versus 12, including members of tag teams the Head Shrinkers and the Nasty Boys, but no tag team matches or anything outside of one-on-one, including the Royal Rumble match. The cage match in its place was boring, with the only mechanic being climbing slightly higher than usual, and the real only addition from the Sega CD technology was a series of low-grade black and white FMV videos on the select screen. Nothing of the other CD games were worth playing. Oh, sorry, none of the other CD games were worth playing, but I salvaged the purchase with the addition of a few of my old favorite Genesis games before getting rid of it shortly thereafter." Oh, buddy, there is nothing worse than wanting a game like that for so long, only to get it and finding out it's a disappointment. And that's the risk. That's the risk with retro game collecting, especially with the prices going up and up and up. I hope that bubble's going to burst. I've been hoping that for years. I don't know. We'll have to see. And a wrestling game as well. I love wrestling games. We'll have to cover some on the show because I have very fond memories of, I don't know, was it Bring the Pain? Bring on the Pain? Definitely, was it SmackDown versus Raw 2007? I played to death. And I'd like to try some of the N64 ones that I missed as well. But yeah, definitely things that I'm going to add to my collection. Um, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry that you had a bad experience with a much sought after game. But the reason that I put your comment on here is because that was a bit of a saga to read, which leads me into my number 3. Oh, yes, we are going back to my beloved Sega Saturn once again for what is potentially the most sought after game on the system. It is, of course, Panzer Dragoon Saga. I know very little about this game, if I'm honest. I know that there are two other games in the series, both of which are far more reasonably priced than this one. They are dragon riding rail shooter games, which in itself sounds like a lot of fun. But for the third game in the series, they really upped the ante by making it a full-blown RPG spanning 4 whole discs. 4 discs, which, these days sounds crazy, but back in the day wasn't all that bad. But I guess this was Sega's answer to things like Final Fantasy VII. They realized they needed a big chunky RPG in order to compete, and this was what they came up with. It was critically acclaimed, but did not sell all that well, apparently, which means there are, you know, only, I don't know how many there are out in the wild, but it's in the thousands. And as such, this is probably the most expensive single game on my list. I mean, I've seen them. I don't think I've seen a copy for less than £500. So when I say that this is a white whale, this is a pipe dream kind of a game. I mean it, because unless I start saving up now, I don't know that I'm playing this on original hardware for a good long while. But I think this, again, my love for the Sega Saturn and my recent acquisition of one, this has to be on my radar, right? It's the cream of the crop, yeah, on that system. And I just, what an honor. What a not an honor so much, but what a bragging piece that would be to have that on the shelf. Yeah, I'd love to give it a go. I hope it doesn't suck. I mean, it gets good reviews and it is very, very highly regarded and very highly sought after, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe if I come into some money, I'll add this to the collection and then move somewhere where nobody can find me, so nobody can come looking for it. But there you go. Yeah, some more love for the Sega Saturn on my list at number three. Panzer Dragoon Saga for the Sega Saturn. Oh, we're nearly there, guys. I mean, this has been something of a saga in itself. A lot of talking for just one man. But while we're talking Sega, I am going to talk about one of the biggest gaps in my gaming collection. Full stop. And the annoying thing is this was not so out of my reach back in the day because I actually had the system that it was on. Yes, I was one of the few who actually owned a 32X, which brings me to my number two. Ah, the one that got away, my biggest gaming regret, the thing that I wish I'd have gotten hold of back when I had a 32X, that absolutely pointless mushroom-shaped plug-in for the Mega Drive. It is Knuckles Chaotix. Now, this game, listen, it's me. There had to be a Sonic, or at least Sonic adjacent game on this list, or else I wouldn't be telling you guys the truth. And when I say Knuckles Chaotix is one of my biggest some days, well, it's number two on my list for a good reason. And I I have to know. I have to know what this game is all about. I mean, I used to collect Sonic the Comics back in the day, and I would see the screenshots of all the games, and most of them I'd play or owned at the time. But this one always looks so interesting, so exotic. I mean, Knuckles gets his own game. That in itself is worth the price of admission because we all love Knuckles, right? I mean, the dude is he maybe he's not as cool as Sonic, but he's up there. You know, the guy is awesome. And when you pair that with the Chaotix crew, and for those uninitiated among you, there is an entire crew of these guys, the Chaotix crew. You've got Vector the alligator, you've got Mighty the Armadillo, Espio the Chameleon, Charmy Bee, and I think I'm forgetting someone, but it's not coming to me right now. But yeah, there's an interesting mechanic in this game which has you basically having two characters on screen at any one time hooked together by these rings, which basically allows you to rubber band characters around the screen, which seems very interesting. I'm not sure how that works in practice, but I suppose you can anchor one person in place and then build up speed with another and then fire both of them off in the same direction. And it just looks wild and wacky. It looks incredible. The graphics are, I mean, I don't know what the 32X actually did for games. It looks like a game that could have run, I suppose, on the Sega Mega Drive. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just bitterness talking. It's just like, for fuck's sake, guys, why? Why has this game not been ported to anything else? And I know I've been saying the whole episode that I want to play these on original hardware, but this is the true definition of a white whale because not only do I have to buy what is already a very, very expensive game, but I also have to buy a 32X, which, as you can imagine, I mean, I suppose they're not difficult to come by, but I can't imagine that they're very cheap. I don't think many of them sold. Ah, but it's just one of those, isn't it? I mean, what are we talking about here? At least 300 to 400 pounds for Knuckles Chaotix, just the game on its own. Never mind the system on which I'd need to play it. And then there's all the wires and the plug sockets and everything. I would potentially need to, I mean, let's say I get the Mega CD and the 32X. I mean, how the hell am I going to fit that into the gaming collection? That's the age-old question, but one day, my friends, one day, I will own Knuckles Chaotix, and then I won't shut up about it. So then you'll all be sorry. All right. we're in the end game now. We're in the home stretch, and what could possibly have beaten all of that? Well, if you've been listening to me talk for any amount of time, you could probably guess the franchise that number one comes from if you've been paying attention. Some of you might have already gotten it. But before we get there, we have one last comment, and this comes from Unbuckled Cape, who's a bit cheeky here, gets two comments, but I kind of split your comment up because it kind of made sense to put this here. So Unbuckled Cape says, an episode about collecting done by the collector seems too obvious. Oh, mighty collector, we are not worthy. But please tell me, which game is worthy enough to hold the title of most copies owned by you? Remasters and multiple platforms count. Well, and this is going to be a huge spoiler for my number one, but excuse me, Jesus, this is a lot of talking, guys, and I'm doing my best. So the game that I probably owned the most copies of, not counting Skyrim, because I do own that on quite a few different systems, but it is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I bought that on Xbox 360. I've got a PlayStation PS1 copy. I own it as part of the collection that I got on PS4 with Rondo of Blood for the episode that we did, God, so long ago now. And I also bought it recently. I bought the Dracula X PSP game there, and Castlevania Symphony of the Night does appear on that game as an unlockable, so I'm counting it. I think that's all that I own it on. But I think, unless there's something I'm forgetting, I think that's probably the most copies of any game that I own in my collection. And that leads us very neatly into number one. Oh, when I tell you that that music just powered me up, that just gave me the strength to push through to the end of the episode. It's, of course, Castlevania 3 for the NES. Now, why is this number one? There are games that are far more inaccessible. There are games that are far more expensive. And, frankly, this is not the most unattainable game in the series. I mean, sure, you're looking at north of £200 for it, but that's not too crazy, with a little bit of careful spending and perhaps fewer lattes and avocados. I could save that money up in no time. I suppose, and it may be a bit anticlimactic for anyone who is expecting some big and shocking rarity. It's Castlevania. It's me. You all know how much I love this series. I've made no secret of this. Castlevania 3 on the NES is a game that I could play literally anywhere. But for me, Castlevania 3 is the game that I fear the most. I have a bit of a reputation around these parts as being as a completionist. We laugh and we joke. I beat games quickly and then move on to the next one. And I have beaten every Castlevania game that I have played thus far. And I'm working through a collection of the entire series. I'm leaving this one for last. Everything I've heard about this game, everything that I've seen of this game, just paints it as the epitome of difficulty for Castlevania. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, that does put the fear of God in your old friend Alan here. And I've always just had this vision that this would be the final hurdle. This will be the last of the Castlevania games that I beat. I am going to earn my stripes on every game in the series up until this point, and this will be the true test of my Castlevania abilities. May sound overly dramatic, but then hey, so is Castlevania. It is the inspiration for the absolutely outstanding Castlevania series on Netflix, and I cannot stress enough, if you've not watched that, then please, please, please go and watch that series. It's incredible. Um, this just feels like the culmination, the end of a journey, the completion of a quest is beating Castlevania 3. And I think the series deserves me doing that on original hardware, the way it was supposed to be played. You know, Does that make sense? I hope it does. It's just, again, it just comes down to the spirit of collecting to me as we wrap this thing up. It's just, there is something to be said about playing these old games on their original hardwares and just feeling a little bit of that magic that happened back in the day. I mean, games will be remade and remastered and repackaged and put out there again, and I'm all for it. The preservation of games is just stupidly important. I mean, it's an art form, guys. It's something that should be preserved and shared again and experienced by new generations, just who hopefully get the same joy out of things that we do. Um, but for me, there's just something pure about playing these wonderful games, these wonderful pieces of art on the original systems as they were meant to be played. And that's why retro collecting for me is so important. It's the connection with the past that I love so dearly. And that's kind of what Retrotopia is all about. We talk about these old games with love, and they it just brings us joy to reminisce the good games, the bad games. That's what we're here for, a combined love of the past, and that's what you're here for as well. So, as I close the episode, I'd like to thank you all for listening. I'd like to thank you for checking us out and listening to Retrotopia. You know, why not come and let me know what some of your gaming white whales are? Join us on our socials, join us in our Discord, all of which you can find at linktree/retrotopia. That's linktr.ee/retrotopia. And if you like what you've heard, perhaps give us a good review, share it with your friends, just get the word of mouth going. Let's get some more ears on this thing and just help this show grow even more as we close in towards our 100th episode. It's been a hell of a ride. Um, Come and join our Patreon. It's free to join. You get all manner of extra content, extra shows. There is a paid tier as well for $2 where you get all of the above, as well as our new game plus series and all of that good stuff. But even if you do none of that, I just want to thank you for listening and thank you for getting us to where we are today. I think next time, what are we doing next week? Resident Evil, my beloved series. Oh, all of my Christmases and birthdays come at once because I have been plugging for that episode for Christ. It's got to be over a year now, surely. How long have I been doing this show, man? I'm surprised they haven't fired me yet. Shh, don't tell them. Don't tell them. Don't tell them I'm still here. I don't think they've noticed. Uh, all right, guys, that's going to do it. Once again, thanks for listening, and I hope all of you are able to get hold of your white whales one day and just enjoy the hobby, have fun, and game on.